Oh, excuse me, I just got a prompt here. A weekly virtual series specifically designed for Nebraska communities and housing partners. My name is John Turner, Manager of Community Development and Research at the Nebraska Investment Finance Authority. Also joining me today from NIFA is Robin Ambroz, Deputy Director of Programs and Marketing, and Susan Pullis, Outreach and Community Development Administrator, is behind the scenes helping to monitor the questions. So due to the pandemic, NIFA has postponed our 2021 Annual Housing Innovation Marketplace Conference, and it's postponed until March 28th through 30th of 2022, so mark your calendars. Instead, we've decided to bring you webinars throughout the year. So thank you for attending today's webinar on the Nebraska Emergency Rental Assistance. Many of you may have tuned in to watch our first webinar on this topic back in February, where we mentioned the different Nebraska jurisdictions who are managing the funding. Today, we are fortunate to have representatives from each jurisdiction. Our panelists today are Jeff Chambers, Program Director at UNL Center on Children, Families, and the Law, and he's representing Lincoln and Lancaster County. Lisa Vukov, Director of Technical Assistance and Monitoring at the Metro Area Continuum of Care for the Homeless, representing Omaha. And Jane Gordon, Program Director at COPE, representing Douglas County. We would like attendees to save all questions until the end of the presentations. You can use the question feature on the right to input your questions, and Susan will hold those until the end of the presentations. If you would prefer to ask your question verbally, simply raise your hand and we can unmute you. So with that, Robin, I will hand it over to you. Do you have control?
Okay. All right. Has everybody seen the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Good morning, everyone. So what I'm going to talk to you first about is the Balance of State program that is currently under operation and was kicked off on February 22nd. Let's see if I can advance the slide. There we go. All right, so NIFA's role in this is that we have been assisting the state with outreach and communications for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and just trying to get the word out and provide education and assistance through the program. As many of you know, the state's program, of course, does not cover Lancaster County or Douglas County right now, or the city of Lincoln, city of Omaha, and that's why we have our partners on here today to talk about those areas. The bill was passed in late December of last year and approved $900 billion in relief funding, $25 billion of which was for rental assistance. And what that meant for Nebraska was we received $200 million total, and you can see the breakdown on this slide of what was all received by the different jurisdictions. The balance of state, which is everything outside of Lincoln, Omaha, Lancaster, Douglas, is a little over $158 million in rental assistance. The way the legislation was written is that 90% of those funds must be used for eligible types of assistance, which I'm going to cover here in a minute. The other 10% can be used for administration and housing support services. Okay, so the eligible types of assistance include past due and future rent. And what that means is that the rent can go back to as far as April 1st of 2020. And then if someone is asking for future rent payments, they can go up to 3 months forward at a time. And then payments to any one household are not to exceed 12 months. However, there is a provision in there that allows for an additional 3 months if it's necessary to ensure housing stability. And so the total could go up to 15 months. Ideally, the payments are made directly to the landlord. There is also a provision, though, in there that if for some reason the landlord is unresponsive or just says, I don't want to participate in this program, after 10 days, then the payment can be made to the tenant. And then another type of assistance that is also available is past due utility payments, and that includes electricity, gas, propane, water, sewer, or trash removal. At this time, it does not include internet for the balance of state, but that just recently came out and said that is an allowable cost. And so some of the other jurisdictions will talk about if that's something they're covering or not. And then utility payments can go back to as far as April 1st as well, just like the rent payments. Important to note is that this is only for utilities that are paid by the tenant that aren't included in rent. And then those payments are made directly to the utility provider. Froze up here. There we go. Okay. Eligible recipients are, it has to be a renter household, and their income has to be at or below 80% of the area median income for the county that they live in. And we'll put these slides up there after this. I think they might already actually be on our website. If you click on this link, it takes you to a searchable database where you can pull up the income limits for each county. A little bit later, we're going to walk through the application portal, and those are also located on there in the frequently asked questions. So the other requirement is that one or more individuals in the household has qualified for unemployment benefits or has had a reduction in their income or other financial hardship due to COVID. And then the last requirement is that the household demonstrates a risk of experiencing homelessness or housing instability. And the way that is done is just through a past due utility or rent notice, or it could even be an eviction notice. Other things to consider are some requirements that were also included in the legislation, which were that households with incomes at or below 50% of AMI must be prioritized. And also if the household has someone that has been unemployed for 90 days or more, must also be prioritized. We have also added in one other thing that was not in the legislation, and that is that anyone who has an eviction notice will automatically be prioritized as well. There's a provision in there that you cannot duplicate assistance, so the household must not have received rental assistance under another program. And something that's a little bit different from the CARES Act money that some programs were operating is that the landlords can also apply for this money. So when we go through the application portal, you'll see that either the tenant can go in and start an application or the landlord can. And then there's a match that happens after all that is done. Okay, and I think, John, I'll turn it over to you to talk about the application and documentation.
Okay, thanks, Robin. So as you can see on here, the website is coronavirus.nebraska.gov, and there is a call center that can help answer questions, and I'll show you a slide real soon about that. So the documentation, proof of income, W-2s, pay stubs, etc., unemployment benefits. Since this program started, we've also talked about if someone's applied for unemployment and they don't have unemployment yet, if there's a way they could do a screenshot of that application or an email that they received saying that they have applied. Past due utility bills, eviction notice, court date. The lease is a big one. Make sure you have a copy of your lease. And then any other evidence of housing instability. So I know at the last webinar, that was a question that came up, and some of the things we talked about and were kind of explained to us was domestic violence would be an example of housing instability. If someone was living somewhere that was unsafe, maybe it was uninhabitable. So any kind of documentation that can show that. And we've, as Robin mentioned, we're doing outreach and marketing, but we're also providing a little bit of technical assistance to the developers. So we've shared documentation from like HUD grants that explain habitability issues or definitions of domestic violence and instability that way. Robin, will you advance the next slide? Okay, so this is actually, when you click, when you type in coronavirus.nebraska.gov, you'll see this pop up, and this explains, what the program is, and it gives you some vital information that can help. So one of them is the program frequently asked questions, and the tenant application user guide and the landlord application user guide. Those user guides actually walk you through step by step how to apply. And as Robin mentioned, the income 80% AMI charts, I believe, are on the program FAQs. So you can go on there and find your county and see. And then the contact center, obviously, that's very helpful. It tells you when it's open, 8 to 7. And if you have any questions as you're filling it out, you can reach out to them. So next slide. So then once you hit, dismiss or click on that, then it'll open this page. And this is kind of the front page of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Again, it does some explanation. And we wanted to make sure until Lincoln, Douglas, Omaha, Lancaster open up their programs, we wanted to make sure that people knew that this is not for that funding. When those programs open up, then we'll be able to put that information on there. People can click on Lincoln, Lancaster and go to the site that will help them the most. So then again, you've got some other helpful information that you can review at the bottom, and then you click to apply now, click here. And there's that's actually the front page of coronavirus.nebraska.gov. The first thing you do is you register for a new account. And then when you do that, you'll get an email and you'll get a username and password. So then the next slide, when you log in, whoops, can you just back up one? So once you have an account and you log in for assistance, then you'll see this that says start new tenant application and start new landlord application, and then track status of application. So as we mentioned before, both tenants and landlords can initiate this process. It is important to know that a landlord cannot apply and get assistance without a tenant's information. So the tenant is the one that has to document that they're income eligible, that they've had hardship, but they need to be synced together. And once they are matched, that's the term they use, there's actually a number, a unique identifier that links the two together. Once they're matched, then that's when payment can be sent. All right, next slide. So this is just giving you an example of what the screen looks like. I'm sure many of you have already gotten on here and looked, but this is what the tenant application looks like. You have your pre-eligibility, applicant information, rental assistance information, utilities, payment information, and certification. It just goes through page by page, and you upload your documents, you upload your proof of income, your lease. There's actually a section, a narrative, so if someone wanted to explain a situation, they can. And you can save the draft every time on each page, which we recommend. And we do anticipate that some folks are going to need help with the application. So, this is a call out to case managers out there and social service agencies to, help folks go through this process. If a tenant doesn't have an email, then the case manager, if they're comfortable with that, they could put their email in, because once you hit submit, then an email will come to you. And actually, even if you don't submit, you'll get an email saying, hey, you still have this application to complete. And then the landlord is basically the same, looks the same, but it's just really to show everybody that both tenants and landlords can initiate the process. We have, since this started February 22nd, we've all fielded a lot of questions. One of the questions that has come up is, what if a tenant isn't wanting to or doesn't understand the process, and the landlord is very gung-ho and it's like, okay, let's get this started. That's where, obviously a relationship with the landlord and the tenant is ideal, and this is a partnership between them. But if there's any agencies that are working with folks, it might just be a misunderstanding. I heard a situation where the tenant just was kind of intimidated and didn't really know what to do. So if there's support out there that can help tenants understand, NIFA is doing a lot of marketing, and like I said, we're fielding questions. So we're trying to just convey that message across the state. And so really remember the 3 L's: have that lease, contact your landlord, and have documentation for loss of income. 3 big L's to remember. And I think that's the end of the slide, except for, so you can apply and download helpful documents. Again, coronavirus.nebraska.gov. The call center is 833-500-8810. I've been trying to memorize it. And then NIFA.org. So NIFA, we have Facebook page and LinkedIn, and we are blasting as much information as we can out. So if you go to NIFA's website, you'll see updates about the information. Follow us on Facebook. And I know that probably a lot of agencies are on here. So if you can, filter this information to the tenants that you serve and just help us spread the word. And then once the other jurisdictions open up, we'll help spread that word too. So having said that, why don't I kick it over to Jeff. All right, Jeff, here comes the screen share invite.
All right, good morning, everyone, and happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm Jeff Chambers from.
Sorry, forgot to say happy Patrick's Day.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Chambers from the University of Nebraska Lincoln Center on Children, Families, and Law. And I'm going to briefly go over where Lincoln and Lancaster County are in terms of emergency rental assistance. It's kind of we're at a good spot right here. Tomorrow, March 18th, there will be an announcement by the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County on the emergency rental assistance rollout for those 2 jurisdictions. That will be at 3 p.m. tomorrow. And a lot of details that John went through for the balance of state will certainly become available then. And I can't share a lot of the details yet in terms of numbers or websites yet, but that will all be available tomorrow. So if you can, please join in on that 3 p.m. Press conference from the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County. What I can share is basically overview of the process. The eligibility criteria that John and Robin went through are pretty much the same for Lincoln and Lancaster County, and they share the amount of resources that are available as well. There will be multiple means to access the emergency rental assistance in Lincoln and Lancaster County. There will be are already in place and additionally staffed public access points where people can present with their need, and those access points will assist in the application for rent and utility assistance. We have built an online portal where persons in need, both tenants and landlords, can access the application online. It's not quite as fancy as the balance of states portal, but I think it's going to do the job fairly well. We are also in the process of getting that translated into Spanish language, but that will not be available at the rollout, I don't believe. And then we'll also have a phone access where individuals can call and access basically the public access points that will then help them complete the application. The documents that John mentioned are consistent with what will be needed in the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County, and there will be more information on those available again tomorrow. There will be a tenant and a landlord application, as I said, on the online portal, and the process for that is much the same as was described by John. We are using our current Lincoln Prevention Assistance Common Fund process in that persons present, both landlords and tenants present at various access points or online. That information is then processed through the coordinated entry system in Lincoln, and the requests for assistance are then sent to the Common Funder, which for the ERA funds is going to be the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation, and they will then process the payments for assistance.
Okay, thank you. You too.
Thanks. couple things I want to point out that are different than the Lincoln and Lancaster currently does have in place, that internet utilities will be eligible for assistance. That includes, those will have to be linked to virtual learning, virtual employment, or employment activities on the internet, or telemedicine. So that's a good thing for in the current climate. A couple other things: uploads of the documents that John mentioned, the leases, the other documents there will be available to be done in the online portal. But if you're not doing an online application, then I would certainly encourage everyone to bring those to the public access points. From our coordinated entry staff, I was told to make sure to emphasize to everyone that as the Lincoln and Lancaster County process rolls out, for everyone to be as patient as they possibly can in terms of the process. We fully expect a very large initial ask once the process rolls out. And with that numbers of requests, it will take some time to get that all processed, so please be patient with the process as we work through that. And I think that's all I have, John, for a formal presentation.
Okay, Lisa, I'll hand it over to you.
Can you see my slideshow? Can you guys hear me and see my slideshow?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Hello, everyone. I am Lisa Vukov, and I am the Director of Technical Assistance and Compliance for the Metro Area Continuum of Care for the Homeless, or MACCH. We are the Continuum of Care lead organization for the far little eastern swath of Nebraska. So we have Douglas, Sarpy, and Pottawatomie counties under our Continuum umbrella. However, what I'm going to speak to today is the emergency rental assistance program that is specific to the city of Omaha. The city of Omaha approached MACCH to basically lead the service provisions of the ERAP program for those renters who are within the city of Omaha limits. Okay, here, I gotta minimize, sorry, because I can't read my slideshow. Okay, so where we are at right now, let me start by emphasizing the fact that we are operating very similar to how Lincoln and the Balance of State are doing. All of the same provisions regarding eligibility do apply. We have not launched yet in the city of Omaha. Right now, we are in the process of getting our procedures in place, building across the framework that we had from the 2020 CARES funds, as well as we've been operating with some flexible private funding since April of last year as well. So we're really kind of building upon that experience that MACCH and our partner organizations had with these other funding sources. We are tentatively hoping to launch at the beginning of April. The exact launch date is still a little bit in flux. Our goal is to be ready to launch by April 1st. However, we may elect to postpone that to April 5th because April 5th is a Monday, but our goal is to be up and running at the beginning of April. We are also developing an online application portal, and we are also establishing a call center to not only assist with the technical assistance that would come with that portal, but also to provide assistance to those who need a little bit more of a human touch to walk through the application process. We are also going to be issuing an RFP for partner agencies in the coming days. We intend to select between 3 to 5 total partner agencies that will help us to process applications and payments. MACCH does have some staffing capacity internally as well, and so we will have some specialists who will be processing internally, but this just allows us to be able to spread out, reach more individuals. A lot of the individuals seeking assistance have relationships with partner agencies and feel more comfortable working directly with them. So we want to be as accessible as possible to everyone. Those partner agencies also are ideal for those who kind of require a little bit more of a human touch in navigating the online application process. And as I mentioned, the call center will help us with that as well. And we are preparing for an updated Match Connect website. For those who are in the Match service area, you are probably familiar with our Match Connect website. I will be showing a slide that looks at it a little bit here in a moment. But that website has been up and running since last April, initially with our private flexible funds, and then when we launched with CARES, and it's just kind of our catch-all for all of the funds that we are distributing under the Match umbrella. One of the really big components of our contract with the City of Omaha is that we need to have a very robust marketing and public awareness campaign. So we are establishing that campaign with a marketing firm as we speak. We will be targeting the areas and populations most impacted by COVID. While the entire City of Omaha is obviously eligible, we really want to make sure that our campaign targets those areas that have been most impacted, whether that be with COVID illness or with the loss of income and other, setbacks that families have experienced due to COVID. We intend to operate from multiple channels to get this marketing and public awareness out, radio, TV, print ads, just different op-eds. We intend to use multiple languages for that as well. And we expect that we'll have a very high volume push with our marketing campaign in the very early months, and then continue to maintain that messaging all throughout the rest of this year. We got a lot of money to spend, as John mentioned. City of Omaha proper received just over $22 million. So we want to make sure that those are getting to households who need it the most. Okay, so this is just a really quick little shot of what our Match Connect website looks like. This will be the process of application. So whether you go to a partner agency or you are completing the application independently and a match specialist is assisting you, everybody will be operating from this Match Connect website. Right now it is up and running. So this link is live. It's just www.matchconnect.org. You can go on, you can peruse a variety of different assistance programs. We actually have a link to the Balance of State application on there. We will also embed the application process for City of Lincoln in there, as they are likewise going to be doing for us in the City of Omaha. Through this, we will be accepting applications initiated by both tenants and landlords. Our partner agencies are also going to be listed on here. So for those individuals or households that would like to apply through a partner agency, we will have those listed so that they can make contact with those agencies. Again, we anticipate having anywhere between 3 to 5 partner agencies for that. And then we will also have a link to the call center to help those with who are experiencing technical difficulties, as well as those who require more of a human touch. Our eligibility, the basic criteria remains the same as the Balance of State, as well as the City of Lincoln, which is kind of that second primary bullet there. The renter household that qualifies for unemployment or has had a significant reduction in household income, demonstrates a risk of experiencing homeless or housing instability, and is at or below 80% of AMI. We also are going to have those provisions in place for those that are leaving the kind of broader definition of housing instability, so leaving an unsafe environment, whether that be through domestic violence or just unsafe, unsanitary living conditions. The other big component, though, is that applicants for this funding must reside within the limits of the City of Omaha, and we are required by our contract to confirm that addresses are in the City of Omaha through the Geographic Information System, or GIS. Omaha is kind of complicated because we have pockets that are surrounded by the City of Omaha, basically, but are not a part of what the City of Omaha considers to be in city limits. And that's who I'll be turning it over to momentarily with Jane. We'll talk about assistance for those who are in the Omaha metropolitan area, but outside of the City of Omaha limits, so that kind of outlying Douglas County area. We also, I do want to mention, MACCH will also be processing payments for internet use, similar to how Lincoln is doing it. We do not have all the details figured out yet, but it will be for those households who require internet use due to online schooling, remote working, telemedicine, kind of the same criteria that Jeff mentioned. And that is all I have.
Okay, thank you. Jane, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so we're gonna just introduce the agency first because I'm not sure everybody's familiar with what COPE is. We are sort of a neighborhood agency. We serve the Elkhorn, Bennington, and DC school districts primarily. Yes.
Jane, just will you go ahead and just start your slideshow so everyone can see, so you can.
Can you see that?
Let's see, I was trying, there you go. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, sorry. All right, so this is, sorry. So I assume you heard me anyway. So COPE serves the Elkhorn, Bennington, and DC West school districts primarily. That is why we were chosen for the grant. So this is just a brief introduction. We have been working in this area for about 20 years, give or take. And I just wanted to emphasize that although we did start out as a church-based organization and we are supported by our member churches, we definitely serve everyone protected classes and for any other reason as well. So this is what we do currently in our community. We do food pantries, utility rent assistance, referrals to other agencies, back to school program, Christmas program, and we're proud of our partnerships with Open Door Mission, Dollar Energy, Saving Grace, businesses, schools, etc. So this is what we're really here for. The Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So we are serving Douglas County, not Omaha. That is the Valley, Bennington, Ralston, Boys Town, the SIDs, and the rural areas. So we already have a presence in Valley and Bennington. The SIDs are mostly out west, although not entirely, and the rural districts. And then Ralston we have not served before, but they are one of those little pockets that is, you know, Douglas County, not Omaha. So we're gonna help them as well. So this is where we are on our timeline. We're getting our contracts lined up over the last couple of weeks. And here we are, we need to update our website. Because we're a local organization, not everybody comes to us through the website. We are mostly word of mouth and community connections. So we are going to beef that up a little bit so that it's a good resource for people. We're currently designing all the workflow, application approval processes. Then we want to start sending out preliminary messaging to the recipients. Again, that's going to have to be super targeted to those people that are within our particular service area. We're thinking of doing a pre-screen so that we can collect emails of people who do answer yes to those specific questions. You know, are you a renter, COVID impacted, below 80% AMI, and Douglas County, not Omaha, late on utilities or rent. So those are just some really easy pre-screens. And then we can get those emails, and that way we can make sure people get the link to the intake process as soon as it comes up. Right now, it looks like we are going to be open on April 16th. We're working on that. We might be able to get it earlier, but I'm not 100% sure, and I would rather, you know, under promise. So that's where we are right now on that.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for great, very pertinent information. It's exciting to be so close to the whole state having this assistance. We, as I mentioned, we field a lot of calls, and a lot of them are when are Lincoln, Omaha, Douglas, and Lancaster going to get started. So we're trying to keep everyone updated as much as we are. So thank you for attending today. I think with that, unless anyone has any comments they want to make before we turn it over to questions, any things they forgot or All right, Susan, do you want to look and see? So we're opening the questions now. If you haven't asked one yet and you have one, you can enter it into the question feature, or you can raise your hand.
We do have some questions already, John. They're wondering, how do you check to know if the renter is not receiving other federally funded rental assistance dollars?
So that is a good point, because one of the things the frequently asked questions did determine was that if someone is on for example, a Section 8 voucher or housing choice voucher, the assistance can only pay their portion, so it can't double up. So if somebody is paying $100 a month and the housing authority is paying the remaining $600 a month, then they can ask for that $100 or the arrears of that amount. We're hoping that most landlords will be aware of receiving some kind of state or federal assistance. In Nebraska, we have housing choice vouchers, we have public housing authorities, we have the state behavioral health vouchers, we have a continuum of care agencies that administer rapid rehousing, permanent housing. So I guess my best advice is communication. Does anyone have any other thing they'd like to mention about knowing if someone's receiving assistance?
All of us are going to be using online databases or portals as well. We also have our statewide HMIS system that I know all of us are going to be kind of checking into and making sure that we aren't doing any duplication. With our partner agencies, everybody's going to feed into the same portal so we can make sure that somebody else didn't already approve them. A lot of checks and balances. But the other side of this is all of us, I believe, are also requiring the landlord and the tenant to attest to the fact that they have not received other assistance. And luckily for the federal government, that is allowable. So it kind of covers us, protects us a little bit as well.
Thank you.
Well, the next question is just wondering if there's been any contact with the Nebraska tribes about the emergency rental assistance.
Yeah, actually, we should have mentioned that. So after the initial announcement came out, then another announcement came out that many of the tribally designated housing organizations also received emergency rental assistance. And so NIFA has been trying to reach out to all of them and coordinate with them as well. And one of the things that we said we would do is try to stay in contact with all of the jurisdictions. So we have been trying to meet weekly. And so we're going to try to pull everybody into that meeting so that we can keep coordinating and learning from each other. And if at any point any of the other jurisdictions use up all of their money, then I think there can be a conversation then with the state to see if the state could start serving those areas, since the balance of state does have so much more money than those other areas. So.
Wonderful. The next question we have is, will lot rent for trailers be available in any of the programs?
So that question has come up, and for anyone that keeps on top of the Treasury Department, there is a frequently asked question that was announced yesterday. So I think this is the third of the FAQs, and it did mention lot rents. I know when I used to provide rent subsidies, we did pay for lot rents. So that looks like that will be an eligible expense.
This question is for Lincoln Lancaster, and they're wondering how a household or landlord can prove that the internet is tied to virtual learning or working from home, and how do they do that if the household's internet is bundled into one cost with other utilities for that household?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and one we've been, I know Omaha's struggling with it as well too, but we're trying to work through that. I know the city and the county staff and departments are working through that. The difference between, one of the differences between the balance of state, and we have a working group in the Lincoln Lancaster that meets once a week, and it basically reviews a bunch of basically flagged applications to determine if it's accurate or not. But what we're hoping for the internet specifically is Our understanding is in most instances, those are broken out in the billing in terms of if you provide if it's bundled with your cable, it's broken out so we can disaggregate that and do that. But then there are still some open questions about what is an upper limit perhaps for an internet usage bill that we're probably going to have to work through and process as we're flying, so to speak.
Well, and in conjunction with that, they're wondering why the balance of state program is not covering internet utilities at this point.
Yeah, I think that, so when the FAQ that came out from Treasury that basically said that that was an allowable utility expense, the state had already rolled out their program. And so I think that basically right now they're prioritizing those other utilities, but I think that down the road there's the possibility to also cover internet, and I think they're just kind of monitoring the requests that come in for utilities at this time to see what all is needed.
And I forgot to mention, Robin, that right now our means to identify whether the internet is being used for those eligible activities is basically by a self-attestation by the applicant.
Well, and we have a question asking if somebody could summarize again how much the balance of state, Lancaster, Lincoln, and Douglas has received in funding.
Oh, absolutely.
Robin, I just sent you screen share if you want to do that.
I'm just going to pull that slide up again here real quick and throw it up. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, so it was a total of 200 million, and the breakdown for each county in Lincoln, Omaha, and then the balance of state is shown there.
Well, and while that screen is up, there's a question wondering if all three organizations or locations that are represented today, if they require a COVID impact to receive the rental assistance, and does any eviction notice qualify individuals for the funds?
You do have to show an impact, I believe, in some way. You can do that. There's a lot of different ways to do that, though. You can have loss of income, you can have unemployment, you can have, I think even major expenses are an allowable thing. And then what was the second half of the question?
It is wondering if any eviction notice would qualify the individuals.
I wonder if they're referring.
They met the other criteria as well.
Do you think they're referring to like a 14-30 day for lease violation? I wonder. I mean, that still would show that they're at risk of losing their place.
I think too, determining that the direct financial assistance is actually going to keep the individual housed as well. So if it's an eviction notice for lease violations and us paying the rent is not going to allow that renter to maintain their housing, we would definitely take that into consideration. So if there was criminal activity or otherwise, but yeah, the financial impact by COVID is a requirement for the funding, but there are a lot of ways that we can get folks qualified. Another way that we have found with just our flexible funding and with CARES, a lot of households had to pay additional childcare expenses when children were out of school. And if we can show that that negatively impacted their financial situation at home, we can get those qualified as well. So some of it is, can be through documented loss of income through paycheck stubs or the unemployment or otherwise. And there's another side of it that comes through just having a conversation and those self-attestations.
Are there any Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I just think we should emphasize too that you do not have to have an eviction in order to qualify for these funds. So that's an important point so that we don't limit the number of people who are reaching out.
Good
And
point.
to emphasize on that, there's a lot of folks who are being protected right now through the CDC moratorium and otherwise. So there are a lot of households that are past due on their rent who do not have an eviction notice in hand, and we want to make sure that we're reaching all of them.
Thank you. This next question is wondering if you have a tenant residing in the state of Nebraska, but the landlord does not live in our state, are there any complications or reasons that they wouldn't be able to access these funds?
No, that's something that did come up, but we know that is a reality. So that shouldn't be a complication.
There's a question about what reasons other than legal status or doesn't meet income eligibility that a person might be denied or is unable to qualify. They've expanded to question if SSDI benefits, disability benefits, felony charges, any of those things would negate their ability to access funds.
No, in fact, if you can show proof that you are, I mean, that can actually help your proof that you're under 80% AMI. So if you have a letter saying that you receive public housing benefits or SNAP benefits, then that can verify that you're under the 80%. But no, that shouldn't.
I mean, I think the only thing important to note is, I mean, you have to meet the income requirements, but you also have to show the impact of COVID. So just meeting the income requirement alone doesn't necessarily mean that you would be eligible for assistance. You need to also show some financial impact as a result of COVID.
And the thing that I would say, at least from Omaha's standpoint, we would actually encourage folks to apply or to contact us because there's a lot of times negative impacts that folks don't realize are tied to this. And again, through that conversation, folks may think that they don't qualify because, well, I didn't lose my job or whatever. But when you really dig down in there, you know, you've had to increase your internet bill because you've got, you know, kids schooling from home. You've had to do this. I mean, there's a lot of ways that a budget can definitely be impacted during a pandemic.
Yeah, or even like, you know, like another example is maybe someone had to even change jobs or, you know, do things a little bit differently because they had to be home with their children or something like that. And so that can also, there's lots of ways that you can show that impact.
Thank you. This next question is wondering, for those working to obtain legal citizenship, would applying for this program bar an individual's admission to the U.S. or their permanent residency eligibility?
Well, I mean, so with the balance of state, person has to be documented. And so the adult applicant that's on the lease has to be a documented citizen in order to get assistance. It sounds like Omaha is working on some of that. Lincoln, you know, anyone have any comments you want to mention about that?
Right. At this point, Lincoln is not requiring documented citizenship to apply for these benefits.
What I would say is that some of this falls back to state statute. And so we're not necessarily dealing with the Treasury regulations, but our different jurisdictions have attorneys that are interpreting Nebraska law differently at this moment. And so depending on who is, you know, coming into who we are contracting with, so in MACCH's case, the city of Omaha, there are certain provisions that we're still trying to work through. I think all of us would like to serve those who are undocumented, but we have legal departments that may or may not be allowing it.
This next question, I'm sure, well, they're specifically talking about their community. I'm sure there are other communities out there that are facing this impact. But if this does not apply to this website, please just respond as such. they're saying that their city typically has a $20,000 electric bill, and they just received the electric bill for $510,000 for the month of February. And they're wondering if there is a specific link that they can direct their residents to so that they don't panic when they open those utility bills and see that massive increase.
They're asking this on behalf of a household or an entire city?
I'm assuming from the way that it's stated that the city is going to trickle that cost down to the individual households, and they're trying to do their best to make sure that their residents are prepared to see that massive increase in what their normal bill would be.
I mean, there's a lot of effort. I don't know if that's in the balance of state, but we're a lot of effort in marketing and getting the word out. We've been meeting with the Continuum of Care, Human Service Agencies, and the Nebraska Children and Families Central Navigation. So, I mean, I'm hoping that if somebody gets that bill, they'll be like, oh yeah, I saw a digital ad on help for utilities. I'm going to call them up where they see it in the paper. So the best we can do is just make sure that information's out there. Jeff?
Yeah, and if they could share what city or village they're talking about, that might be helpful.
Yeah, and which, yeah, that would be great, because we've also been meeting with a lot of the utility companies so that we can partner with them and they can get the word out to their customers. And so a lot of them are aware of this and have been passing along the information to tenants as well. So
I would also just clarify, because we've had a couple of these questions come up in just our continuum, but one does not have to receive rental assistance in order to receive utility assistance. And I think that sometimes that gets lost. And so, you know, we can help just with utilities as well.
that's a really good point, Lisa. Now, they do have to be a renter, but they don't have to be asking for assistance with rent as well, yeah.
There is some concern that the organizations distributing these funds will be able to allocate them by the end of the year. What do you guys feel or think about this process?
Right now, we just want to get the word out. So when, you know, we want people to apply, $200 million is unheard of. Jeff and I worked on the homeless prevention rapid rehousing program in Lincoln, and it was 1.4 million, and we thought that was a lot of money in 2009. So we just need to get the word out, and people need to apply and ask questions, and then you know, NIFA is going to help the balance of state with looking at denied applications, so we can see if there's any way we can help those get approved. And someone might have to correct, but the goal is the end of September. We should have at least 65% of the funds spent. And then if we have 65% of the funds spent, then Treasury then can allocate additional funds until the end of December. Is that correct?
Right.
Yes, and there's some extension in the new law as well that extends it now through 2022, September of 2022. So, but where those timelines and benchmarks are, I can't specifically say, you know, new acts are being signed. There's supposedly also maybe another tranche of funds that are coming, so.
But that is important to know that these funds now go till September of 2022.
Yep.
Thanks, Jeff and Lisa. Yeah, so I mean, renters that are falling on hard times, they need to apply and ask for help. And, you know, there's great evolution happening across the state right now, because people are reaching out saying, how can we help? How can we help market this? You know, what if we set up a satellite station at the local library and we help people apply? So, I mean, there's good momentum happening. So that's why we're just trying to get the word out. And as Robin mentioned, all of the jurisdictions communicating together is that.
Yeah, and just I think too, as we keep on emphasizing, you can be behind on either rent or utilities. You do not have to be evicted. You don't have to be drowning. There just has to be a hole in the boat, you know? So we want to make sure that people are at least applying for this assistance, and we can go through your application and help. But that's, I think, the message we need to make sure we get out there. So we get those applications in.
Yeah.
As a continuation of this question, they're wondering if that 65% allocated by the end of September is for the entirety of the 200 million, or is that per region that's been allocated?
That was
I'm pretty
Treasury
sure.
guidance.
Yeah, I think it's by jurisdiction. So
Yeah.
if Lincoln gets their 65 or doesn't, so it's not the whole 200.
Treasury issued the funds directly to the specific jurisdictions, and so they are going to be monitoring that directly. So in our case, the city of Omaha directly has to commit that much by that deadline.
I believe you guys answered this earlier, but we've had another question about whether or not receiving disability or SSDI will impact the eligibility of any applicants.
No, if anything, it will help document that they're under 80%. In fact, some of those folks are well under 50% AMI.
The only issue that I sometimes see with that is because you have a fixed income, you can't use unemployment or reduced wages or furlough to prove COVID impact. So that's fine. You just have to find some other venue that shows COVID impact, whether that's increased childcare or, you used to do odd jobs or, whatever it might be that you can show that you've legitimately lost, you felt financial impact from COVID.
This one is an interesting question. They're wondering if there's a turnaround time for reapplying for funds, or when should an applicant start another application to receive additional funding if they still need it after the initial disbursement?
That's a good question. So it would depend kind of on what they asked for in their first application, I think. They could have asked for past due rent, and then under the guidelines, they can ask for 3 months forward. So if they had asked for that 3 months forward, then they could ask again after 3 months if they were still needing it. And, if they had only asked for past due, then they could come in right away and ask for the 3 months if they hadn't the first time. We've kind of been encouraging people to, if they have some past due, and ask for the 3 months going forward at the same time, so that can all get approved at once. So.
Yeah, and related to that, Robin, I think that's right. And related to that, one document that I don't think we've mentioned much yet, but we probably should, is that if applicants have done their 2020 income taxes, that's an excellent document to submit as proof of income. That way, if they do need to reapply after the initial 3 months, that is already there, and that process is probably going to be much easier.
And so I don't forget, one of the questions we've gotten a lot is when landlords call and their tenant has already left. So the tenant actually has to be currently in possession of the unit, has to be renting the unit. So this won't help if the tenant's gone. You have to sync the lease, the tenant and the landlord up.
We have a question wondering if you can give an approximate timeline for once they make the application, are approved, till they receive the funds.
Well, I can give what our experience in Lincoln is and what we're projecting in Lincoln. It's projection. So please don't, if after the initial glut of applications, it's not met, understand that. What we've done in the past is we've been able, once the application is submitted, within 24 days, a payment is made, and that's within the city of Lincoln. But that is completely dependent upon the ability of both the tenant and or the landlord to submit the appropriate documentation. That is the time frame that takes the most amount of time. The determination of eligibility doesn't take that long. The actual application doesn't take that long. It's making sure that all the documents are there so that eligibility can be assured. So within 30 days, I would think within Lincoln is certainly going to be our goal.
Yeah, and
I echo that as well in Omaha, and everything that Jeff said about what it's contingent upon. We intend to, and I believe we still intend to cut checks twice a week. So once approved, it will go to being cut and then distributed. So as quickly as possible. However, we will already be in communication to notify both the tenant and the landlord that funds are committed, which should hopefully also halt any further proceedings, knowing that the funds are coming.
Yeah, I would just echo what Jeff and Lisa have said. I think on the balance of state side, the experience has been the biggest challenge is matching that application, the tenant application with the landlord. And in some cases, I know we have some that are approaching that 10-day period. So I can't remember if I mentioned this when I was talking before, but if the landlord is unresponsive for 10 days and they've tried to reach them 3 times, if there's been no result after that, then they can pay the money to the tenant. And so in some cases, I think that is going to happen just because there's not a response from the landlord. So
This next questioner is wondering if the 80% AMI eligibility requirement is for the immediate time frame that the individual is applying for assistance. For instance, if the person was above 80% AMI up until a few months ago when they lost their job or were furloughed, does that impact their eligibility now?
I can take that question because that actually, I received a call that was very similar to that. Someone was over income 2020. They lost their job beginning of February. And so I was wondering if the self-attestation would be the way to go. I reached out to the software team, Deloitte, and the advice was to attach their last pay stub in January to show that they've applied for unemployment. So they hadn't received it yet. So if you have a PDF of an email verifying that you applied for unemployment, and then in the narrative, explain it. And so that felt like that was going to be enough justification to get that approval, if anyone has any other comments.
But just in general, I think we all agree that it's their current income and however
Yes.
that is approved. So regardless of what they made last year, if their current income is below that AMI, they're eligible.
Sometimes you just got to think how you're going to prove that. And this person had a pretty legitimate case, but they were struggling to prove it. So I think hopefully that helped them.
Yeah, and in the guidance, it said that as far as proving income, you could use either W-2s, you know, big frame proof, or you can use last 3 months wages and pay stubs and stuff. So you can go either way.
I believe you guys have adequately addressed this, but I'm going to ask this question again in case anyone has further information they'd like to provide. They're wondering if the guidelines are going to be the same all across the state, or are they varying by the jurisdictions? And are there any accommodations made for Western Nebraska?
I mean, we're all following the guidance that the Treasury put out. And so, you know, the eligibility criteria, there's not, the only differences right now are that I can see is Lincoln and Omaha are covering internet. I don't remember, Jane, if you had said if internet coverage would be covered. And then the documented status in Omaha and balance of state currently. So, I mean, there was some, I don't know how you would say it, not flexibility, but some local jurisdiction rules. But the rest, the overarching eligibility is for all of us across the country.
This questioner is wondering how the jurisdictions are defining allocated.
Allocated, meaning funds were allocated to the jurisdiction, and then if the tenant's approved, funds will be allocated to the landlord. Spent.
So I'm assuming that's to meet that 65% or so. I think in Lincoln, what we're doing, if we send a request to the common funder to cut the check, that those dollars are allocated.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, we're basically looking at it from a committed point. So once they're committed, they're going out.
If you don't have a demonstrable COVID impact, can you simply provide the eviction notice or a utility shutoff notice?
No, there has to be some sort of financial impact due to COVID also provided. And the income requirement.
But again, don't hesitate to, have that conversation, depending on where you're applying, because a lot of times there are circumstances that folks don't realize impacted.
There's a question here wondering if anyone is aware of the eviction moratorium being extended beyond March 31st of this year.
I have not heard.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Will a payment guarantee be sent to a utility company once a request is approved to avoid shutoff?
Yeah, we will, we are setting up our process, at least in Omaha, where we will have a notification that goes out, whether that be daily or a couple times a week, to the utility company as to the pledges that we have made.
This question goes back to the 80% AMI requirement. If their income has bounced back or recovered to being above 80%, but they're trying to catch up from when they were furloughed or had lower income, can they be eligible?
So I think if they're asking, let's think about this. If they're asking for past due rent and they can demonstrate that from their 2020 W-2 or tax return that they met the income requirement, I think that would probably be acceptable. The going forward rent would not, because for every 3 months there has to be an income check at what their current income is. I don't know, how does everybody else feel about that? I think that would probably be the case, but
That's what I was thinking too, if there was a way to show the arrears and that they weren't at that income level. That is a new one for us though.
I don't think we've run into that situation yet.
Great questions, by the way. I'm amazed.
Our final question that's in the question feature is, can a part-time working college student qualify for the assistance? And what would happen if the student lost their job or was forced to quit schooling because of the pandemic?
Just have to be a renter. As long as they're a renter, they're eligible.
I don't have any additional questions, so if anyone would like to ask a question before we proceed, feel free to type that in or raise your hand and we'll unmute you.
Thank you very much, Susan. That might be the record for questions on a NIFA webinar. So this is obviously an important, engaging topic. So thank you all for taking the time to ask and for being here today. I think that will conclude our presentation today. So I want to thank everybody for being a part of this and presenting. I know some of you don't have your programs up and running, but just to hear that you're working on it, I think is good for the audience. So best of luck to all of you. And as I said, we will be communicating ongoing throughout this process, and I bet you'll probably see another webinar with more updates down the road. So that completes all of our questions from today's presentation. I would like to thank everyone for attending, and a special thank you to our presenters. I also want to take this time to thank our sponsor for today's webinar, which is Twain Financial Partners. This webinar has been, let's see, Robin, I don't think this webinar has been approved for CEUs. We didn't get it in time. Sorry, folks. Next one will be. Previous webinars and this one are recorded and are available on our NIFA.org website under Community Development Trainings and Webinars, and on our YouTube channel at NIFA Housing. I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and go to our Facebook page to stay on top of this stuff. And then next week, stay tuned for our webinar. It's an economic update. So this would be a good follow-up to this. We're going to feature prominent economists discussing the state of the economy for 2021 in relation to housing trends, state trends, agricultural, and COVID. So thank you all. And with that, I think I will say goodbye.
Thank you.